Hello again, friends. And you are our friends. And welcome to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru. And here's Jim Cornette.
Oh, come on.
Now, you didn't expect that, did you?
Well, no, if I opened my front door, I wouldn't expect to have a pink elephant sitting on my front porch either. Doesn't mean it would make any sense in the context of the situation. You're not going to, see, I browbeat you last week.
Yes.
As I'm sure the folks remember, for your lackadaisical approach to the intro, when the week before I had praised you to the heavens and gone on and on and on about how wonderfully you did the intro, and then now you're just gonna phone it in, so to speak. I hate people that phone in their work instead of sitting at their desk talking into a microphone like I am right now.
Well, this is a pink elephant episode of the Drive Thru. This is episode 100 of the Drive Thru.
Well, that's why I thought, yes, it is 100 episodes of this incarnation of the Drive Thru, and one of these days we're going to go in the vault and get all of the footage and the reels and reels and reels of audio tape and put everything out in the archives. But this is this incarnation of the Drive Thru's 100th edition. And I thought because of that, you were going to give us a big flowery intro and try to top 2 weeks ago instead of just tanking it and just giving it over to me, which is a safe shot every time, obviously, but still.
First of all, it may have been last week based on our release schedule. Second of all.
Or it may be next week. It may be next week you did the best. See, we have taped a couple of these, folks, but this is fresh. This is a fresh, hot, steaming pile of drive-through today that we're recording right hours before we put it up on the internet.
Well, you're fired up. I mean, you woke up fired up. Wrestling's got you excited again.
Oh, no, come on. No, and we want to make mention of, yes, this week on The Experience, we will be reviewing the All Elite Wrestling offering from this past weekend. I say offering in much the same tense as prison mess halls offer up gourmet dinners or soup kitchens offer up nourishing meals. They're offering Fyter Fest. We're going to interview it. Yeah, we're going to review it this week on the Jim Cornette Experience. That's on Thursday. What is that? July the 4th. Fireworks this Thursday for the 4th of July. You won't need any. Don't go to Possum Sam's discount fireworks or wherever. You won't need any because there's going to be some fireworks. But I haven't seen all of it yet. I haven't seen most of it yet because you
didn't make it past the pre-show.
Well, that's the thing. It's they did this last time where I've suffered through it because I could skip forward on the last show. I wasn't trying to watch it live as it happens. I made that mistake last night. Yes, I'm exposing the business here. We're recording this on the fine Sunday for airing on Monday. But last night, I tried to watch the thing as it happened. And I got into that pre-show, and I won't give all the first match I liked. I'll say that much. And I've seen the person that I consider one of the next big stars in the wrestling business. We're going to talk about that on Thursday. I'll tell you who that is. And then from the penthouse to the outhouse, I skipped the girls' match after the dueling librarians because, once again, as I said before, if they're not going to take it seriously, then why should I? I don't need to watch them if they're just going to go out there and jack off. It's the fucking stupidest shit I've ever seen. So we get to the hardcore match between Michael
Nakazawa.
Nakazawa. I would like to Naka Michael. He's a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit, and I don't like him at all. And I couldn't warm up to him if we were cremated together. If oxygen was on sale, I wouldn't buy him any if he was on the fucking moon. I don't know how to and he's cut a promo I didn't understand, and then out comes this fucking dumpy fuck that's apparently the mark for himself that's running this gaming convention, and they proceed to have an amateur class wrestling school training match on worldwide television. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's an old wrestling tradition, and all the territories did it, of involving a sponsor or a DJ or somebody that can get you publicity or sell you tickets, or the the coach of the football team at the high school where you're having a spot show, or you put a DJ in the corners, the special manager, or the firefighters raising money for charity. You have a tag match where the wrestlers can do the work, and you don't really have to not only smarten these people up to everything, but also you give them something simple to do that people enjoy, and not leapfrogs and drop kicks and fucking fighting a hardcore match in a kiddie pool. What these inexperienced young lads trying to run this wrestling promotion don't understand is that, first of all, they're good business-wise. They're going to need stipulation matches. They're going to need whatever their version of a street fight is, or a hardcore match, or a no disqualification, or Texas death, or all of the wild angle blow-off match. You're going to need that. And on your, what is this, their second official show?
Yes.
On their second official show, they book a hardcore match between a fucking preliminary guy that pours baby oil all over himself and a fucking amateur, middle-aged, dumpy, pasty gaming guy that, yes, he may be the sponsor of the gaming convention, but does that mean that when Snickers sponsors WrestleMania that we have to put the goddamn president of the candy company in a fucking hardcore match? Maybe I shouldn't just give him that idea.
They may do it.
But it's the same fucking principle. When you allow yourself to prostitute your business that bad, then, but anyway, they're going to need a stipulation match. They're going to, so they, instead of being able to say, okay, between Chris Jericho and Adam Page, after their rivalry over the last however many months, we've booked this ultimate last man standing or street fight or hardcore, no rules, no holds barred, no disqualification. Just like we had with the fucking opening match guy and the fat amateur fucking outlaw fucking gaming guy on our second show ever. They're devaluing their shit already. Even if you're going to have a fucking amateur wrestle a single match against a guy that the amateur Jabali wasn't in there against goddamn, Shawn Michaels to begin with, or Jerry Lawler, in terms of making a fucking non-wrestler look like a wrestler. And it was silly. And they took bumps and all the plastic things and choked each other with gaming console. And everybody was saying on Twitter, the ones that weren't saying, there were quite a few saying this was fucking bullshit. Even people that kind of wanted to be complimentary to All Elite Wrestling.
I think even Dave Meltzer was like,
yeah, Dave Meltzer was like, thank God this pre-show is over with. And the old Kenny McIntosh inside the ropes in England, who's pulling for him because he loves wrestling, was like, oh boy, they shit to bed. But anyway, not only did they do all this hokey foolishness, it went on forever. They're trying to make this guy a goddamn a wrestler for the Mark fans. Oh, but what I was going to say, some of the people on Twitter were going, well, it was just the pre-show. It's just the pre-show. It's not the real show. You're watching it. The people in the building are watching it. The people watching the televised feed around the world are watching this. That means it's not the pre-show. It's the fucking show, motherfuckers. That's what they couldn't understand in Ring of Honor about this when they were putting out the tryout matches and the pre-show matches. If it's in the building, the show's taking place in front of the audience that's going to watch the show, it's the fucking show. And to put trainees and the most inexperienced talent and the most obviously unknown talent and probably have the worst matches, to put them on before your fucking show, I never understood the goddamn wisdom of to begin with. But to insinuate that because if if you're putting on a major event, but because we haven't said, okay, this is the actual show, we're just showing you some wrestling to begin with, so it doesn't have to be good. Am I missing logic here?
No, you have caught logic. You have a complete control of logic right now.
So anyway, when this amateur, and plus, and then they had some cut-ins with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega doing apparently something that was funny, if you got the joke. Kenny Omega's carrying musical equipment around, and I don't know what the fuck. And so after that, I said, I had prepped for the show by taking a Xanax and eating a couple of nice homemade cheeseburgers early. And I had me a Reese cup, and I said, this is the best mood I'm going to be in. I'd gotten a good night's sleep the night before. I said, this is the best mood I'm going to be in to watch this show. And by the time the hardcore match was over with, I said, all right, I can't do this fairly now because this was so offensive and so insulting. How many legitimate professional wrestlers are there out there that would have loved to have, that are unsigned, that would, or at least not exclusive, that would have loved to have had that platform or been in that environment in front of that crowd? But yet, here's the gaming guy could have been somebody's manager, or just say, then fuck you then, because it's not that important, especially to a billionaire, I would assume, that you have a wrestling show at a gaming convention if the gaming guy has to be one of the stars of the fucking show. Somebody could have some balls and say, no, you're not capable of doing this, and it's stupid anyway. And whoever laid it out, allowed them to do that shit, is irresponsible and stupid. And now everybody complaining on Twitter this morning, there's more people complaining about one potato chair shot, which I haven't seen yet. I will, if I haven't already seen, I will see, as Nick Gulas used to say. They're complaining about a potato chair shot instead of something that was blatantly not just disrespectful, but just made the entire business and their entire company and everything that they're trying to do, and everybody who did come after that and try to do their job in a responsible way, it made all them look like shit. And some people are like, oh, but he hit him with a chair. A chair shot, yeah. I don't know why you would let somebody hit you with a chair without putting your hand up, except in the most extreme of angles. And Bobby Fulton did a couple, and bless him for it. It was terrible. But most of the time, guys that could work knew how to take fucking chair shots. And then 20 years ago, with all this ECW horseshit and hardcore garbage deathmatch, we're going to talk about some of that this week on The Experience. It's back in the news again, but guys just started hitting each other. And now they just found out Balls Mahoney. Imagine this. They just examined his brain and found out he had full-blown CTE. Who could have ever known? Poor Boo. Will always be Boo to me. He loved that shit and did it constantly, and it scrambled his fucking brains. So no, it's stupid to do that. But I'm not offended by, obviously, they had made an agreement, I would have guessed before. I don't know, maybe I'll watch it, and this fucking, this guy just fucking clocked him in a totally unprofessional manner. But one would think that, shit happens, and I'm all in favor of a fucking one chair shot that makes the business look good. That looked real. Shit, he's really bleeding. Okay. That's not offensive. Amateurs in hardcore matches and goofy comedy from a bunch of jackoffs like Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks with their dicks in their hand and a video game in the other one, making wrestling look like a Saturday Night Live sketch, to me is offensive and needs to be what's complained about. And did I mention fiduciary irresponsibility to whoever is feeding this shit to this fucking poor beleaguered billionaire that is getting sold a bill of goods when they're out there having a bunch of fucking laughs and jacking off with their friends? Is nobody else going to say this? They have a fucking chance at this. They are funded. They have a TV network. They have a fucking backer that obviously wants to go all the way. And instead of trying to goddamn promote fucking responsible fucking professional wrestling and actually get a company over to challenge Vince in the long term and a place where guys can go to work for fucking the next 10 or 20 years, everybody's like, boy, well, this will be fun. We'll do all this hoo-ha shit. And Kenny Omega and his fucking whiny voice and the Young Bucks, and they're like, well, the Young Bucks actually said, yeah, we gimmicked the chair. Instead of saying, oh, that fucking Sean Spears, he went into business for himself. Nobody ever dreamed he would do something like that. This fucking guy, I can't wait till Cody gets his hands on him and he'll cave his fucking head in. They're saying, well, we gimmicked the chair, but shit goes wrong because what they are rubbing everybody's nose in this. The Young Bucks are that these two fucking clowns that have a lot of athletic ability, and so do trained chimpanzees, who in no other time, in no other place, in no other way, and with no other tactics, but being a clown show, could get over in professional wrestling. These grade school, middle school looking, fucking no physique, non-intimidating, jack-off clowns who just want to fucking play with their dicks in public and just be funny. They, in no circumstances, since the dawn of time, could they ever have gotten over in the wrestling business otherwise than by what they have done, which is appealing to a bunch of jack-offs that want to make fun of the wrestling business. And these guys, and Kenny Omega, who's Laurence Olivier on the stage of the Hammersmith Odeon, creating his fucking art, creating his art and playing his video games. I did see some comment on Twitter that he dressed as a character from Street Fighter.
They all did.
Which is the closest he'll ever get to being in one. Fucking pansy ass goddamn, he just sounds like I just like to create my art. Fuck. Anyway, I'm just saying they're gonna take this fucking billionaire's money and do this bullshit, and it's gonna be the equivalent of of a pet rock in the 80s. It's gonna be a fad until people get tired of making fun of the silly wrestling. And then it's all going to have been a waste, and everybody's got to go groveling back to fucking Vince McMahon. And I'm pissed about that. I'm not going to have to go grovel back to Vince McMahon. Other people have. I'm not going to go, but I'm pissed that in fucking 10 years of Vince or his heirs or successors, they're going to have to be going groveling back because they're going to blow this fucking thing. I knew it from the start. When I heard who was involved, they couldn't be serious. They couldn't be serious, and they couldn't do this on a big league basis. And everything I said is coming true. What were you going to say?
Well, a couple of things. I said too many cooks, and I stand by that because I got to give him credit because I've killed him in the past. Cody's stuff has been the best stuff on both shows. The stuff that actually felt like classic wrestling. You may not dig the match. You'll see the match, but that angle, I got to say, Cody's totally booking himself the way his dad would have booked himself. My best friend runs in, hits me with a chair, babyface and heels. Everyone comes out to rescue me and save me, and they carry me off in 20 minutes.
Well, and everything that I've seen about from Cody also, his match with Aldis, his match with Dustin, he gets it, and obviously he's Dusty's son. He knows what this shit's supposed to be. He gets it. His shit looks good. You take it seriously. And the other, that's why I don't, there's hope in there, but you can't tell who's doing what. But there's hope in there, but he hangs around with a bunch of jackoffs. He's hanging out with the fucking East Side kids. Fucking Leo Gorsey and Hunts Hall are over on the other side of the room fucking writing on the goddamn chalkboard.
Well, speaking of the Bowery Boys, let me ask you another thing. You brought up that Young Bucks press conference afterwards, and obviously we'll do the full report on the experience. This is just the fresh thoughts of the pre-show.
Yeah, fresh hot steaming thoughts from...
So the Young Bucks played it one way, of just, breaking kayfabe. MJF, did you see the MJF press conference? Because that was amazing.
Well, yes, I did, because you emailed it to me and said, watch this. This is amazing. And since it was MJF, yes, I did. And I immediately retweeted it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the next biggest star in the wrestling business looks like. And that's they gave us. They're schizophrenic. It's like they will give you the horse shit that runs. And I can't count how many people on Twitter have said, well, that's the same thing as with the Battle Royal at Double or Nothing. I turned it off after that. They start you out with shit that runs half the audience off. But then if you stick around, and in between, some of the other stuff sucks too, but there's also shit that's fucking fabulous, buried in there, hidden in all the tomfoolery. And MJF did a press conference, and I can't remember. I've only been watching him for less than 6 months now. As a matter of fact, that's what I did. I turned off after the hardcore match. I turned that off, and I went and watched Svengoolie and myself on beIN Sports on MLW, just as a palate cleanser.
You turned off AEW to watch yourself?
Well, goddamn, it was better than what I was fucking looking at. So was Svengoolie. And the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll was better than what, but another thing is, because MJF is on MLW, I can't remember anybody that I have ever said this about in my head so many times in professional wrestling. Goddamn, I wish I had done, or I wish I could have done, or I would have thought of that promo. And with him, I do it all the time. I've only been watching him 6 months. But yeah, whether he gets the physical, he gets the work, he gets the timing, he gets the verbal, he gets the personality, he has the body language, he has the attitude and the charisma, the facial expressions. In 20 years, he will be a high-ranking executive in whatever the biggest wrestling promotion in the world is, unless he has already gone on like The Rock to do something even more important. But then you have to fucking watch, the Chuck Taylors of the world, and you have to peer through that fucking glaze of smeared feces to see the diamond on the other side of the window.
None of those tag teams impressed you?
Well, no, I see you're going to narrow me down, because I wanted that to be a tease for this week on the Experience.
Okay.
In the match involving, it was a 3-team match. It was triple threat tag team match. So there was 5 professional wrestlers and Chuck Taylor in it. I have pinpointed one of the next big stars in the wrestling industry. We'll talk about that Thursday.
Oh, wow. Which pre-show did you like better? Which pre-show did more damage to wrestling? This one or the Double or Nothing?
Well, no, Double or Nothing was still much more egregiously offensive and vulgar and rotten and stinky, and so much more of a gigantic burst of diarrhea in every way. That Battle Royal was the worst. That Battle Royal may have been the worst thing I've ever seen in the wrestling business, because of the money that was being spent on the production that was shooting it, and the crowd that was watching it, and the many places it was being telecast to. I think that Battle Royal is probably the worst thing ever in wrestling.
Wow.
But anyway, more on this on Thursday, but it's another thing. I just couldn't. They run you off. They run you off. So, but I know I've said some harsh things about Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, and I'd like to take this opportunity to say I'm in every one of them, and I don't give a fuck, and I don't apologize, because fuck y'all. However, I will. What are you laughing about?
It's you just threw that in there out of nowhere, and it was perfect.
Well, no, I'm trying to say that even though that I'm in it and I don't apologize, and etc., I am going to do them a favor, one favor. I'm going to give them some advice, some information that they need to know, because sooner or later, when the FBI or the Justice Department or whoever handles such a thing comes and finds them and arrests them on a charge of impersonating professional wrestlers, I want them to have adequate representation. Wouldn't you want them to have adequate representation when they're hauled into court on charges of assault and battery on the corpse of kayfabe, on the charge of murder of the wrestling business and impersonation of professional wrestlers without licenses? Wouldn't you want them to have great representation, Brian?
Well, I enjoy some of their matches every now and then. So yes, I would like them to have adequate representation. I'm surprised you would.
Well, as a matter of fact, see, here's what this is, because I think they're losing this case anyway. they would lose that case. Nobody on earth could possibly not convict them on those charges. However, I want to see how good Stephen P. New is, because I want to see if Stephen P. New can get their charges reduced when they're found guilty of assault and battery on the corpse of kayfabe, on killing the wrestling business, on impersonating professional wrestlers, when they are found guilty of the rape and molestation of the minds of wrestling fans around the world, when they are found guilty on all charges. I want to see if Stephen P. New, the greatest attorney in the world, the man who could have talked Nixon out of Watergate, as we say, I want to see if he can get those rightfully deserved death sentences commuted down to just life imprisonment. Because if he could, then that would cement Stephen P. New's legacy as the greatest litigator, as the most bombastic barrister, as the finest counselor in the history of the practice of law. And folks, he can be on your side too. Stephen P. New, the newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084, can be on your side. Now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, I don't even want to hire a lawyer that would represent those clowns. Well, no, you want to hire the lawyer that will get them put away for the rest of their lives so we never have to see them wrestle, folks. But also, if you're a victim of one of these major corporations, if you've been poisoned by Monsanto's Roundup, if you have been given a case of genital gangrene by the diabetes drug Invokana, if you have been suffered loss of hearing because of these 3M combat earplugs that have gone sideways for the military and caused hearing damage and loss. If any of these big corporations, from General Motors, Marriott, Universal Studios, Amazon, all the big pharma companies, they're a bunch of pricks. Exxon, BP, poisoning the waterways, all these and more. Stephen P. New engages in representation of the downtrodden little guy in these class action suits and individual cases, and he gets people paid. As we've said here on the program many times, if Stephen P. New can't fill your ass up with cash, your ass does not accept cash. Folks, I can't tell you how highly I recommend the services of a man like Stephen, who is also a Democrat and also realizes that Trump is a maniac, and I'm sure would never be caught dead ringside at a battle royal involving legless men or hardcore matches involving dumpy, fat gaming CEOs. Wouldn't you say that's correct, Brian?
I'd say he just put some tickets on StubHub right now.
There you go. He did what?
He's selling his tickets to their next show.
Oh, he has tickets to their show?
I don't know.
Certainly they were given to him free. Stephen's wise with his money also. Anyway, so folks, if you need legal representation, if you want help with whatever your problem is or however you, your family, or your friends have been damaged, get even with Stephen. If you need to sue, call Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084, newlawoffice.com.
Well, Jim, our first question was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. It's from Tony.
Well, wait a minute now. You know, we did this you did that shitty intro.
What?
And we went off sideways about what happened last night. And this is the 100th drive-through, and you never explained the premise of the program. Because there's a bunch of new listeners. We're taking questions from them, the cult of Cornette.
We are indeed, and these questions can be sent in a number of ways. Well, actually, 2 ways. I say a number of ways. There are 2 ways. 2 technically is a number. Last time I checked, you could send them in via email, the CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, or you could send them in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru. I got to say, Jim, I got into a little bit of an argument with my gardener the other day because we were discussing some.
Your gardener?
My gardener. We were discussing some new plans we want to do for the front.
I don't have a gardener. I got a guy that cuts my grass.
So what do you say?
You got a gardener.
What do you call it? Is this a southern northern thing? What?
Well, it just sounds awfully hoity-toity.
A gardener sounds hoity-toity?
How many motherfuckers you think in this country have gardeners?
If you live in suburbia, you have a gardener.
I've been suburban all my fucking life, and all I've ever had is a motherfucker that cut my grass.
Oh, please. I hear you live on Millionaire's Row. Suburban all my life.
I did. What? I'm way out in the woods. I used to be way out in the woods. Now town is finding me, but still.
Right. That's right.
Garden. All right, go away. You were talking with your garden. Does he use Roundup?
That was the problem. We actually got into a little bit, I wouldn't say a little bit of an argument, but he was a little bothered that I was insistent that I didn't want him to use Roundup. And he was trying to like scare me off on the idea of not using it by explaining the cost. He's like, well, I could spray this down and we're done quickly. Or, it's man hours. You're going to have to pay to have my guys here. They're going to have to be ripping stuff up and doing it. I'm like, I don't care. You're not using this stuff. But then he starts telling me, he's like, yeah, my wife doesn't want me using it because she says I'll get sick. But I'm like, look, I'm fine. I'm great. And I'm like, this poor man. Oh, no, please. But yeah. But our first question sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com.
One of the number of ways. I'm going to see how long I can fucking stall this off. But one of the number of ways the number 2.
This is a record for getting the first question on the show. But this is from Tony. Is there any relation between Paul New and Stephen P. New?
Not that I'm aware of. I've never heard Stephen rap, and I've never heard Paul New litigate a case in court. I don't know that they're related. They come from different parts of the country. Wasn't Paul New from the Pacific Northwest up there somewhere?
I think so. Midwest or Pacific Northwest, one of the two.
This is the greatest promo that Paul Heyman ever did. I remember to this day, this was in 1991. His name is P in News, and he raps all the time, but the funny thing about him is his raps don't rhyme. We know that he can sing, and we know that he can dance, but with a belly that size, how do he make romance?
That's the greatest Paul Heyman promo ever?
That's the only one that really ever stuck with me word for word.
See, you do like rap.
Only when Heyman does it.
Heyman, yeah.
Only when a late middle-aged Jew from fucking Scarsdale that's balding and looks like Alfred Hitchcock does it. If he leads a rap group, I will watch them.
I got news for you. Middle-aged Jews invented hip-hop. They were there right there at the beginning. Well, anyway, Jim, let's get to the next question here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go for that.
Let's stay on something that's timely since you've kind of opened that door here this week on episode 100, a spectacular of all time here. This was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mike Gunter. This was sent in...
Silo Mike from Raleigh, North Carolina. Hello, Mike.
This question was sent in a variety of ways, dozens of times on Twitter and on email, so I'm going to ask this one, the cover for everyone. Jim, what is your opinion on Vince hiring Heyman and Bischoff to be executive producers of Raw and SmackDown?
Oh, I've thought about this over the last couple of days, and I have several thoughts I will share with you. One is, Eric Bischoff running anything at this point, that's crazy, but I think Vince McMahon is snatching up everybody he thinks the other guys might snatch up, and he's probably convinced himself that, all these decisions are good as well. So Bischoff, whatever. With Heyman, obviously he will do... Well, I don't know whether he'll do a better job or not, because we still don't know whether... Is this like one of the Bill Watts deals where, oh, yes, you've got complete control of wrestling and for 2 weeks until I start changing it? Or is this an autonomous position outside of Vince that, so those questions remain to be seen. But yeah, Paulie's great at everything. He's a great booker, as we've talked about. He cuts great promos. He's a great personality on camera. And because he's such a fucking master swerver, he can talk people into doing almost any fucking thing. So he's perfect to be a business executive. My shock there is I just don't know how these motherfuckers have the energy to do this shit anymore. How, in all honesty, because Paul, I know Bischoff's older than I am, but of course he needs money from what I've heard. So I'm sure he'll take any fucking job. And also when you think about the fucking track record of success for both those years that he ran WCW 20 years ago and has basically, he's a great TV performer. Eric Bischoff is, but this is, as far as being creative or being a booker, no, never, 1,000 times no. And, I guess he's going to work with the TV network. So, we know from Turner, he was good at conning TV networks because he made them think that he knew what the fuck he was doing. But once again, he's 4 years old or whatever. And Paul, surprisingly, as we've mentioned, is 5 years younger than me, but he's still in his early 50s. And I've said this about Paul before, just when he started managing Lesnar and going to Raw. How does he have the fucking energy and the passion and the want to do that anymore at this stage? And so I'm shy and I'm, proud for him. But, when you think about it, and especially if it's just going to be a job where you do what you want to do as long as it's what Vince wants you to do. And we've all Paul had those before. That's why they went sideways, 15 years ago, the first time. And every other time since then, probably. Yeah. So if it's that, then I started thinking, I say, what? Because I know they're paying a ridiculous amount of money these days because they're doubling all the wrestlers' contract offers and paying the executives a fucking fortune with the stock and blah, blah, blah. They get, but I thought to myself, if somebody came to me and said, Jim, for a year, right? Because I've always said, if somebody gave me $1 million for a fucking year, I'd do anything for a year. But if somebody came to me and said, we'll give you $1 million, just have this job for a year, that is perplexing because I don't know if it was real, which now these money amounts, it's starting to be real. So somebody could actually do this someday, because whoever thought they'd offer the rest of these yahoos this much money? And I would have to turn down $1 million. And that would probably cause me to have some kind of aneurysm, because in my brain, it would self-destruct. They're willing to give you $1 million. But when you think about it, if let's say that you're the vice president of Raw, that apparently means you're going to have to go to Raw. And Heyman already has been to begin with. Now, he lives in New York, so he's got a fucking foot up on everybody else. Because if you get anything relating to a full-time job with the WWE, if you don't move to New York or Connecticut, then you're never going to be home. And Bischoff lives in Colorado. I would think he's probably only going to be home a day or two a week or whatever the fuck he can work out. So Paul's got a foot up on him there, but just to go to Raw, you have to go in the night before because the meetings begin early the next day. I never once got up some morning when I worked there and we all said, okay, we're going to Raw tonight. We were already in that town the night before. So that's a hotel on Sunday night. And then you get out at midnight. So it's a hotel on Monday night. So you are guaranteed to be in a hotel room 104 nights out of the year just to go to Raw. And that's not counting if you go to other meetings or go to other TV tapings, or you're needed at a pay-per-view, or you're working with the network, or you're working with the writing team, so you got to be in Connecticut or whatever the fuck. So I figured out just when I was last with Ring of Honor that I was going to be in a hotel room, I think 70 nights that year. I said, fuck, I have a 1 in 5 chance of waking up dead in a hotel room instead of my fucking house. And then the amount of flights, and even for people who like to fly or who don't mind flying, actually, I don't think anybody likes to fly anymore, but who don't mind flying like myself, you're in airports every fucking week, multiple times, and hotel and the rental cars, and not mentioning doing the job and the work when you have to sit there and for my case, see what in a lot of cases modern wrestling has become and the way that even trained modern wrestlers think versus sanity, and that stress and aggravation and pressure. And then if you're like me, I'm pretty sure Paul's like this also. I think Bischoff don't give a shit. If you're a perfectionist and everything that you do and everything that has your name on it has to be exactly like you want it, and you obsess on it to the exclusion of all else, and the mental stress there, I would have to turn down $1 million because I wouldn't do that for a month. I'd crack up. I'd go to jail in some incident in the airport because I'd be a combination of Xanaxed and on nerves end and in a panic when somebody did the wrong thing. or I'd flip out over the fucking way that these guys think these days, or I would be sitting there in a hotel room at 4:00 in the morning, not able to sleep because I'm thinking I could be fucking home with Puppy and Stacy. You know, so I applaud them that they have the energy and the desire to do this. But this year I'm going to be, I figured out, and especially if the rest of the year goes approximately the way I have planned and nothing comes up, I'm still going to be in a hotel room about 40 nights this year, which was way more than I had planned. And I just can't imagine it. So all congratulations to them. But we're too old for this shit, to do this shit on a full-time basis. And unfortunately, once again, is it going to change anything? I tried it a while back with Ring of Honor. It was, and then with TNA, which was even more travel and more hectic. You can't save wrestling anymore by yourself. So, and if this doesn't work out, then they've given up their own. I assume they're going to give up the podcasts. And well, Paulie doesn't do one, but Bischoff, because you can't. But what about Bruce? Bruce was a big news story about 3 or 4 months ago. What has he done? What is he doing? What is it?
Record low ratings.
Well, I mean, I'm not. I'm just saying, what is the news on Bruce? I thought he took over some of this. He was going to be Vince's next in command.
He's killing it at catering.
But I mean, he's still doing his podcast, I assume. So did they just give him a part-time job to come to TV? I haven't heard anything about anything. It's been a quiet subject. But anyway, bless them all. Bless them all. I'll just pop in from time to time and do my part-time thing and be at the house. But that is I was thinking about that. I said, what the fuck would I do if somebody said, well, Cornette, you got to go every week to wherever the fuck. And Heyman went to fucking Saudi Arabia. Heyman went to Saudi Arabia. I turned down Israel in world class in 1985. That's another reason why we gave our notice when we did and went to work for Crockett, because they were going to take us to Israel. Like, fuck that, even then. Much less after being 30 years of an internationally renowned superstar. But I just, that was the beautiful thing about the territories. You lived in the territory, you lived in the main city. You were home most nights. Mid-South was quite hectic, but Memphis was actually very pleasant. And then, of course, the Fullers would open up a nice short trip territory. You could go work for them for 6 months every once in a while as a palate cleanser. And you had a home life, and you had a personal life, and you were in the car with the boys. And then you were in the car with the rats at the matches. And then you were in the car with the boys again, and you got paid. You were on TV, made money. You were in the wrestling business. All this fucking international globe-trotting, flying around the fucking world doing sports entertainment killed all the fun in the whole fucking profession.
Who do you predict is going to last longer, Bischoff or Heyman?
Bischoff.
Really? Really?
Well, yeah. Well, hold on. They will either fire Paul E for getting mad and yelling at him, or Bischoff for not knowing what he's doing. But which one will take place first? I would think it would take less time for Paul to just say fuck it and start yelling than it would for them to figure out that Bischoff doesn't know what he's doing, because they don't know when anybody else doesn't know what they're doing. They'd have figured it out by now.
Would you turn down $2 million?
Oh, for heaven's sake. Now, hey, would you fuck me for $1 million? Yes. Would you fuck me for $10? No. What do you think I am? We've already established that. Now we're just haggling over price. If it got up to around 5 million, I guess theoretically I could just buy my own custom tour bus and just for a year, just drive from one place to another. For $5 million.
Maybe buy out one of your neighbors, expand your property.
Well, that would be after the year was over with. Then I'd buy every motherfucker around here and tear all the houses down so I could be in the middle of fucking 500 acres.
All right, our next question.
Well, there we go.
Our next question was sent in on Twitter.
I hate to knock him.
Why doesn't the opponent expect the baby oil? Why are they shocked by it? And by the way, I'm not going to go off on this match right after.
Why does the referee not take the baby oil away?
There's so many.
Because the idea of the referee inspecting the contestants before the match started, one of the things that he would do was check to see if the wrestler was oiled or had any slick substances on him, because that was what wrestlers used to do in the old days when it was a shoot. So that's why the referee would check you, you dumb shit. So if a guy's standing there with a bottle of baby oil in his hand and you got a fucking stupid referee.
In kayfabe, what would happen? As soon as the guy took out the bottle, does the referee DQ him right there?
Yes. Yes.
Not stand by, let him do it. let the entire mat get covered in baby oil.
Because it makes no sense. It's stupid. People laugh at it. It's never been done before because of all those reasons, because you didn't want to do stupid things and made people laugh at you and didn't sell any tickets at the same time. And yes, the referee so that'd be a stupid way to get disqualified. At least, if you get disqualified for hitting somebody with a chair, well, at least you took a chance. You might be able to win the thing, do some damage, get out of a bad situation, whatever.
How do you think Pockets would do against the the baby oil?
I don't think Pockets would do very good. He's the kind of guy that I wish had come to OVW 10 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever the fuck, so that I could have personally had the pleasure of fucking telling him what a piece of shit he was and kicking him out of a wrestling school. Because people should have been doing that a long time before now. It's how children get spoiled, and how, basically criminals become more emboldened when you get away with something over and over, even if people know about it and they don't redress you in some way, or you don't have to suffer some penalty for your stupid, irresponsible actions. You do them more often. Somebody in a wrestling school should have kicked Pockets out. Some wrestler in a locker room should have kicked him in the balls and beat the shit out of him. Something should have been done before now that he is emboldened to do this shit in public. And I would like to have been able to have been one of those people. If he was a little bit older, where I could have probably made him fucking cry. I bet you I could have made him cry. Quit the business, definitely, but also cry. And that would have been the best thing that anybody could have ever done for the wrestling business with Pockets.
Well, we will have more about the spoiled children of wrestling AEW this Thursday on The Experience, but let's get some more questions in here, Jim.
Sooner or later, I'm going to get them some ratings. They're going to have to send me a check, because I'm actually going to have people watching this fucking shit show, this dog and pony show.
Just to hear you talk about
fiasco, just to see if just to check out my legitimacy and see if it's actually as fucking moronic and stupid and egregious as I say it is. So I'm going to be the one getting them the ratings. And then of course, it's only going to be ratings for one individual show, because once they're going to watch one, they're never going to fucking watch it again if they keep doing this stupid shit.
Our next question was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Mary. First, love your podcast. The Von Erichs were before my time, but their story is both fascinating and heartbreaking. Minus personal demons, just based on ability, it factor, promos, etc. Who do you think would have been the biggest star had they all lived?
Oh, God. Well, Kerry would have probably been the biggest star, but not based on all those things. I shall explain further. Kerry just had the look and the body and the charisma physically to draw you to look at him. He just looked like a superstar. Now, of course, compared to many folks in the business today, they all definitely look like superstars. But the Von Erich boys were a lot like the Armstrong boys. They each got a lot of their father's attributes, but each one of them got one main attribute. In other words, like if you go back and look at with the Armstrongs, it's kind of universally thought of it. Brad was the worker. Road Dogg obviously was the promo. Scott was kind of the business mind. Steve was the biggest one and probably the most athletic. Just because Kerry had the great body, Kevin was probably the best athlete of the bunch. I mean, just especially that leg scissors he used to do as a finish in Georgia when he went to Georgia in 81-ish, where he would just jump up and wrap his legs around the guy's stomach and not holding on to him, free hang there with his leg strength until he took the guy down. He did a believable fucking body scissors, which is hard to do. David had the promo and the psychology. He was, I never met him, but all the people that I did talk to about said that he was probably the best worker in terms of psychology and knowing how to work and could do the promo.
Jeff Baldwin raves about his 82 stuff in Florida as a heel.
Yeah, and he was a good heel too, which the others never even really got to do. So, it's kind of like that. I think Kerry would have been the star just because Vince had his eye on him just because of his look and his size and the body and everything. But they each got a little bit. Fritz never had a body, but Fritz was bigger than all of them. He was a huge fucking just a raw-boned, as they used to say down in the country, kind of guy. But Fritz could talk. He did a great promo, and Fritz had a head for business and psychology. And he was a good athlete in his day, played for SMU. He didn't look wiry like Kevin or jacked up like Kerry, but, it was a different time. So it's sort of like the Armstrongs. They each got a little bit of the old man.
I once heard John McAdam, host of Stick to Wrestling, a fine show on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network.
I've heard of that upstart network taking over the world.
He put out a hypothetical I thought was interesting. If David hadn't died, and let's say he was alive at least until 1990, would he have been a candidate to be The Undertaker?
What?
Could he have been The Undertaker, David Von Erich? The way Vince was bringing people in and just giving them gimmicks, giving them new names, forgetting about who they are in terms of wrestling history, and he wanted someone for that role, would David Von Erich been someone who had been a fit for that role?
No. I think not only can I not see David Von Erich doing the Undertaker gimmick, I mean, as well, performing it well or carrying it off, I don't think that David Von Erich probably would have done the Undertaker gimmick.
What'd you think when they brought in Kerry and just changed him to the Texas Tornado?
I wasn't surprised at that point. Longtime readers of The Observer will note that Dave was talking about Vince had revealed his wish list when he had that All-American Wrestling program on USA, and he was using tapes from other territories. He was telling the promoters, hey, I'm using a national TV to get, everybody's guys over. But actually, it was his Christmas list because all those guys, that he was playing the footage of, that the promoters were providing the tapes of, he eventually got JYD. And, and one of them was Kerry Von Erich. And finally, it was 3 years later or whatever, 4 years later, maybe 5 years later. But he got him. The only reason he got him was because Dallas business was down. I don't think the boys would have deserted their father at any point unless, it was more like, go, son, save yourself type of deal, which it was at that point. And, he wanted the guy, but he didn't care about the name. All Vince saw was, look at this guy and look at his body, and he's from Texas. He wasn't going to put any stock in the Von Erich name because that would be admitting that, other people were big stars, and he wasn't doing that at that point. So I wasn't surprised he changed his name, just like I wasn't surprised that he wanted Kerry of the Von Erichs. He would be the one that he'd want.
Is it that Vince is simple, or that Vince thinks the audience is simple, or needs to be treated like they're simple?
Yes. No, Vince isn't simple, and Vince is complicated as fuck in a lot of ways. But no,
But in terms of his entertainment ideas, I guess.
But yes, yeah, he dumbs it down, way, way down, for the audience, and I get he's like everybody goes too far in one way or another. And I will admit that there are even left-wing Democrats that I feel go too far. You have to make things somewhat understandable, logical, believable. Remember when you were reading me the fucking, and the 3-team rules and the winner goes into the finals of the thing that they have had all summer to determine who, once you get that complicated, you've lost everybody and they don't give a shit, right? But when it's see, spot, run simple, it's fucking goofy. You have to explain guys, gimmicks, angles, situations, why they're mad at each other, whatever, but it can't be too intricate, and it also can't be just, oh, look, here's the Texas tornado, and just stupid, dumb, simple. But yes, Vince likes to err on the side of simplicity.
He really wanted them bad when he first went national because he acknowledged David's death on TV. He put them all over his magazine, which no outside promotion got any coverage in WWF magazine or acknowledged on their TV. And I guess the story is he offered to buy Dallas, and Fritz responded maybe with, how about we merge? And that was kind of the end of it. But he really wanted the Von Erichs at that point in 84.
Yeah, well, but also think about this. He wanted Dallas, and he wanted the Southwest. If you had Dallas, you had a pretty good chance of, because, we know how things turned out when he tried to work with Paul Bosch.
Yeah. And he had New York and Los Angeles and Chicago already as big markets. So, yeah.
Yes. If you had Dallas, you had most of the state of Texas, because as went Dallas, went everything except Houston, as long as Paul Bosch was around. So if he had Dallas also, he'd have a foothold into Oklahoma. And, you could run loops and weekends down there. And Dallas was at the time top, still is. I don't even know where it's ranked, but what, top 7, top 8, Metroplex? Anyway. And see, that's the thing with the Von Erichs, the world-class syndication, the television started reaching a lot of people around 84-ish, 83-ish, 84-ish when they started syndicating.
Yeah.
But still, except in Texas, see, a lot of people think that World Class was so huge because it was on before a lot of the other programs, territory programs were syndicated, and it was syndicated wider than a lot of the other territory programs. So a lot of people think that it was a bigger deal geographically, and it looked great. But it wasn't a big geographic promotion. It wasn't like Mid-South Wrestling that covered Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and part of Texas for Houston there because of the alliance with Paul Bosch. It wasn't even as big geographically as the Tennessee territory. It wasn't even as big geographically as the Continental Territory in Pensacola. But because it was Dallas, Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth, that huge metroplex, those giant arenas, big newspapers, major television stations. The Von Erichs, when I was there in 85, they weren't even really drawn in South Texas anymore because San Antonio had been its own territory and it had gone under with the Southwest debacle on USA Network. And so they were trying to run that, and they did okay. And Amarillo and Lubbock, that had been the Funk's territory, or they'd go out there and they'd do okay, but it wasn't like the old days when it was its own territory. And so really you were getting the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which was fucking huge for a syndication network for drawing huge crowds in Reunion Arena. But the Von Erichs could put 20,000 people in a building in Dallas, but except because of the television syndication, you could have gone up the road 300 miles to Kansas and they wouldn't have drawn 1,000 people until the TV got syndicated because nobody knew who they were. Then the TV got syndicated there, and then they became names, but still Vince would have been buying Dallas itself with the Von Erichs, and it was sort of a self-contained geographic territory. I can see him doing that. I don't think he would have wanted to buy Mid-South Wrestling or even Vern Gagne's AWA because all those markets spread out to run that thing. It would have been hard. It would have been hard to run that. Yeah, Vince could have,
He offered to buy Vern's AWA.
Not for a lot of money.
Well.
But anyway, I can see because, I think Vince bought Calgary because he wanted the Canadian TV and at the time you had to have a Canadian ownership for Canadian television to run your content and there was a lot of rules, different country. That's why he bought Calgary. And I can see him buying World Class just to buy Dallas.
And Los Angeles. He bought Michael Bell's promotion.
He bought Los Angeles because that's all it was at that time was Los Angeles. But he wouldn't have bought a full-size territory because he wanted specific markets like that.
When you were in Mid-South, he couldn't get into Louisiana because that was on lockdown for Bill Watts.
Yes.
And it was the most corrupt state in the union. Yeah. But beyond that, were you there when he first brought the WWF into Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Mississippi?
I believe so. We were in the area. It was either we were in Mid-South or we were in Dallas, whatever. But they came to, I think, Oak City and died. I can't remember exactly where they ran a couple of shows. I think Little Rock, and they did. Yeah. They really did. They didn't do well it's like in Tennessee. They did well in Nashville because Nashville was probably the lowest ranked regular weekly market in the Tennessee territory at that point. And Nashville was a more entertainment oriented town. So they did well in Nashville, but they could never draw in Memphis. And they did good a first couple of times in Louisville with Hulk Hogan and all the stars, but they couldn't really get anything going because they couldn't get in the gardens and people didn't like the convention center. And they didn't do any business really in the Carolinas to speak of. But so they did pretty much, the WWF did business everywhere else except in the early years, Mid-South, Tennessee, and the Carolinas because of the local promotions. I remember coming home and seeing people and them going, "Oh God, that WWF horseshit, it's so cartoon." That was before they had the Rock and Wrestling cartoon. They were actually calling WWF cartoon. Our regular wrestling fans here, they were like, "How can anybody watch this?" But for the parts of the country that didn't have the tradition, they were seeing shit. Sometimes they were seeing wrestling for the first time in some of those places.
Did Vince make an offer to Lawler? Because, obviously with Mid-South, he was having trouble there. He goes after JYD and eventually goes after other people. With Mid-Atlantic, he has Piper. He gets Steamboat. I think he wanted Flair, and Flair.
Oh, no. Well, but think about this. None of those people actually owned part of the promotion.
Right. That's why I'm wondering if he even made an offer to Lawler.
No, never that I heard. And then plus, whenever they tried to come in, Lawler was on because Lawler was the designated hitman on promos, obviously, for all those, the obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So he was the one to fucking eviscerate him and talk about what a clown show it was and how nobody should fucking waste their time with that stuff. So I don't think they ever did until, and finally, the way that Stan Lane, Lawler, all those guys, myself probably eventually, when Vince thought he was going to jail and brought Jerry Jarrett up to hand the company off to keep warm just in case, Jerry pitched a bunch of these people that hadn't been pitched to Vince before because it was different social circles. And there you go.
Our next question, Jim, was
and Bruce hated Jerry. That's why Bruce Pritchard is always one. And I love you, Bruce, but it's bullshit. Jerry Jarrett was brought up to run the company because he was the only one that Vince could trust, didn't want to fucking steal it, and probably wouldn't, and would go home when he asked him to. But Bruce hated Jerry because Jerry treated Bruce like a stooge. Jerry related to Pat on the same level and to Vince on the same level. But Jerry had no respect for Bruce because in his eyes, Bruce had never done anything in the wrestling business, which in comparison's sake was the truth. So Jerry treated Bruce like a stooge, and then Bruce tried to go and do the stuff where he would play on Vince's sense of humor and discrimination against Southern people by making fun of Jerry's accent and or things that he might say rather than the substance of those things, trying to devalue Jerry's opinion in Vince's eyes so that he would go home and Bruce and Pat could be the ones to run the thing. But anyway, I digress.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com here on this 100th episode spectacular from Billy McPherson. Let me preface this by saying I'm a big fan.
It's grown to a spectacular in just barely over 60 minutes now.
Let me preface this by saying I'm a big fan of Jim's career and the podcasts, but I'm curious to know, either in your early years or later on, are there any memorable moments where something big, such as a finish or a key spot in a match, was messed up due to a mistake or mishap that would have been entirely Jim's fault? And if so, what was the fallout, and what do you say to the boys afterwards?
I remember the very first one, because when I first got in the business, I was so astonished that they were letting me do this that it became like the one thing that you don't do. You know, you throw your body over the live grenade before you. And with me, it was ever go to the ring not exactly fully sure of what I'm doing and having it in my head and seeing it and knowing what the fuck, right? Because I was petrified that I would somehow fuck up and they would come to their senses and go, well, he doesn't need to be doing this. And so it was quite a while before I really fucked anything up in a major way. But it was at a spot I lost. I didn't lose track, but I stopped paying attention one night. I was paying attention to, I wasn't paying attention to paying attention. I was paying attention to the wrong thing. It was at a spot show. I've been in business for 6 months or whatever. And I'm managing Roger Smith and Donnie Bass. They're the assassins against the fabulous ones, Stan Lane and Steve Kern. And goddamn, they were having a really good match, and I'm at ringside, and the only thing I got to do is at the appropriate point, when it breaks down in the four-way and the referee's distracted, I'm going to throw Roger a chain, and he's going to grab it, but as he grabs it, fucking something's going to happen where Kern takes it away from him and fucking hits him with it, boom, 1, 2, 3, and the baby faces foil the heels' attempt at cheating, and all's right. Well, they're having such a good match. I all of a sudden came to my senses when I'm looking at Roger in the ring screaming at me, here. I'm looking at because they're both in identical fucking hoods and I'm watching the match and I've just spaced on my cue, right? So I grabbed that fucking chain out of my pocket and I threw it like fucking, I don't know a famous baseball pitcher because I hate baseball.
Oh, come on.
But who's a famous baseball pitcher?
Tom Seaver.
Okay, like Tom Seaver, I threw that fucking thing, fastball, to fucking Roger, and nobody, it was like it instantly teleported from my hand to his. Nobody even saw it. Kern didn't even see it. Has he got it? I don't know what the... So I just spaced that night. So, but that was a valuable lesson because they taught me, no, here's the way you're supposed to do it. Because I still knew it throwing gimmicks and stuff, right? You're supposed to take it and you're supposed to throw it kind of underhanded over the top rope so everybody sees it flying in the ring and the heel catches it and all the fans get it and they know what's going on. That makes perfect sense, right? Well, it's just 2 nights later, I'm managing the Assassins against the fabulous ones in Nashville, Tennessee at the Fairgrounds Arena. And they're going to do the same finish. And I'm going to apply my newfound wrestling wisdom. I'm going to throw it way up over. And also, by the way, this is a cage match. So I got to throw it up over the cage anyway, right? So I'm going to throw it way up over there where everybody's going to be able to see it. And the spot comes and Roger's going, give me the deal. And I take that thing underhanded. I throw it way up over that cage and way up in the air. So it's going to come way down in the middle of the ring, except I went too far on the ways. I threw it so way up that it went way up over the ring lights and came down on top of the ring lights and landed there. And there's Roger standing there with his fucking hands out looking up. And so Kern ad-libs and just fucking, as Roger's distracted, Kern flies up with a fucking flying 5-arm, boom to the jaw, and knocks him out that way and beats him 1, 2, 3. So we go to the back, and Roger's fucking dying laughing. He said, "Goddamn, the first time you tried to throw it to me, you almost knocked me over with it. The second time you throw it, it fucking disappears and never gets there." But, I mean, shit happens. but yes, I got a lot of those fuck ups out of the way early on, and there was a couple times that racket tosses went awry. But honestly, I'm trying to think of anything that just went to complete total shit and had to be horribly changed that I was completely responsible for, and I can't come up with one. So maybe that's a good thing.
All right, we have time for a couple more questions here this week, Jim. This next one was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru. We'll stay on the topic of timely issues here this week. This was sent in by Keaton Sellon.
By what?
Keaton Sellon.
What's he selling?
Well, we'll find out right here in a second. Tommy Dreamer told a story of how he planned to shoot Paul Heyman at WrestleMania 17 because of the ECW closing and of him appearing on WWE. Other than Jim wanting to shoot Jim Herd, are there other stories we may not have heard before?
Okay, I'm sure there are. There's probably a number of stories that all of us have never heard before.
Well, Jerry Brown shot at Bill Watts' house, right? That's one of the famous stories.
Yes. Well, and actually, and if Ray Stevens is to be believed, and considering the person he was talking about, I can believe it. Ray Stevens told me he shot Don Fargo in the leg one time when they were brothers, but just with a .22 pistol and just in the fleshy part. They were riding in the car, and Don wouldn't let Ray sleep. Ray told him, "If you fucking wake me up again, I'm going to shoot you." And he said he did, so he did. And then they both laughed, and he drove him to the hospital. But no,
Wahoo shot Slater.
Wahoo shot Slater, but that was an accident, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly. But no, well, for one thing, what was the second instance? I just heard this story of Dreamer, and a lot of people wanted to shoot Paul because he owed him significant amounts of money, or they had spent significant amount of money trying to help keep the company going. And then they see him show up on Raw and after they've all been closed down. At least when I showed up on Raw, it was to make money to keep Smoky Mountain open, not as a byproduct of closing it down. What was that second of example? Dreamer trying to shoot Heyman and somebody else wanted to I didn't want to shoot. Well, I would have shot Herd if I could get away with it. Yeah. But no, that story comes from, I said the way I wanted to give my notice to Jim Herd was when I quit WCW, and when that day finally came, was I wanted to kick his office door open and fire 4 or 5 blanks at him from a blank pistol. But then Bobby Eaton said, "Corny, as many motherfuckers hate that guy, don't you think he has a real pistol with real bullets in the top drawer of his desk?" I'm like, "Oh shit, you're right." So we didn't do that, But it's first I'd heard of Dreamer wanting to hop the rail and shoot Paul E, but I just think, why couldn't he have done that 8 years beforehand, and we wouldn't have to suffer through ECW instead of waiting that long? No,
That's awful. That's awful.
I just kid.
Did you ever talk to Chris or Tammy about that? The idea that when ECW went...
I thought he meant shooting Heyman. They wanted to also.
Well, that was my question. When ECW went out of business, I mean, Tommy's story is that he personally, as well as his parents, had put money into ECW with the idea they were trying to save it and keep it afloat, and they needed this money. Chris and Tammy had done the same thing, correct?
Yes, Chris told me, not Tammy, but Chris, so I fully believe the story, that they ran so much up on their credit cards buying plane tickets and transportation for the talent. Paul named Chris some type of assistant something, so he had an office position, and then Chris was using his own credit card to buy plane tickets and other shit on theory Paul was going to reimburse him. It not only ruined their credit, but they lost the house that they had bought with the WWF money that they had made. but they got booted out of that or had to give that up or took a bath on that or whatever the fucking details were 20 years later because of all the money that they owed and the credit that they got ruined by buying all the plane tickets and all the shit for ECW to keep it going, and then obviously didn't get that back.
You ever think you did things wrong at Smoky Mountain Wrestling, not bankrupting your wrestlers?
Well, yeah, I'm just, if only I had known that it worked the other way around. Instead of me dipping into my pocket to giving the guys in Smoky Mountain money when they were short, and I was working for the WWF to finance the Smoky Mountain Wrestling business, I could have done it the other way around and had the Smoky Mountain Wrestlers finance Smoky Mountain Wrestling and then kept all the WWF money for myself. I did it completely backwards from the way that an honest, legitimate professional promoter does it.
Could you even see having the conversation like, hey, dirty white boy, Tony Anthony. I
swear to God, I was going to bring Tony up first. Tell Tony, hey, Tony, can you buy Robert and Ricky some plane tickets to come up from fucking wherever and I'll pay you back Tuesday? Fuck. No. And that's why I say Paul's very good at convincing people to do things. Part of it is you can't have a conscience, but no, that's, and once again, I loved Chris and I'm grouping him in with this category, but Chris was markish, especially in those days when he was so young and he wanted so bad. And I was markish. I was fucking using my own money in a lot of cases for Smoky Mountain myself, but, it was a difference in wrestling. That was the start of it. The 90s wrestling group, that got started at that point were more liable to want to do it for love of the game and spend money to do it rather than, are you fucking crazy? I'm not getting paid, but you want me to get hit over the head with a fucking chair, whatever the fuck. It was a change, a turning point in the business. I've always been in both camps. I love the game and I want to do it for the love of the game and I want to make as much money as possible for it while I'm doing it. But I won't do it if I'm fucking ashamed of it for any amount of money. And you can't fucking do everything for free that you love anymore either. So I try to hit somewhere in the middle.
All right. Well, we're not at the middle. We're at the end. We have our last question here. Our very last question. This
100 of these, eh?
This was in this iteration of it. Yes. We did many more beyond that. The numbering of these episodes is all screwed up.
Yeah, we ought to do a real secret kayfabe guide to episodes of the experience and Drive Thru one of these days.
We should do like a Marvel Comics restart where everything goes back to episode 1 again and we start all over again. But anyway, our final question this week sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Lucas in Pineville, Kentucky. Given the seemingly renewed interest in tag team wrestling, I'm curious as to whom Jim's Mount Rushmore of tag teams would be.
See, that's the kind of thing that, because of my OCD especially, I would have to take 2 weeks off from all my other work and sit down and do research and compare notes and make graphs and charts and weigh decisions carefully and et cetera, because it's over a bullshit fucking what if question. But words have effects and consequences. Yes, the Midnight Express should be on there. Yes, the Road Warriors should be on. Yeah, the Rock and Roll Express should be on there. But so should Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel. And how can you not have Rocca and Perez? Even though it was a gimmick team, it was the biggest drawn tag team in the history of their business, still to this day. How can you not have the Golden Grahams or the Fargos?
The Deucics.
The Dirty Deucics or the Von Brauners. Or how can you not... you can't really, you can kind of even have a Mount Rushmore of classic rock, right? Beatles, Stones, Who, Zeppelin, whatever the fuck. There's too many tag teams. Is it a Mount Rushmore of this particular territory's wrestling? Or you can't do, but I mean, especially because some teams in some cases For the Midnight Express didn't draw what Rocca and Perez did at the gate, but the Midnight Express were the best in-ring tag team of their generation. Rocca and Perez were the shits in the ring, but it was Rocca and Perez. When Rocca's formula got old, then they threw in the young Puerto Rican kid to sell and get the shit kicked out of him, so all Rocca had to do was make the tag. Were they better than Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel? Obviously not, but it was a different presentation in a different place, and so it drew bigger. Stevens and Bockwinkel lasted forever, but were they better than Stevens and Patterson?
They had the best promotional photos of that era, but how big were the Kangaroos in actuality? The original version, Heffernan and Costello.
Well, they were really fucking huge in any territory. Because if you read the wrestling magazines, and they were referred to on sometimes on TV programs, even in territories they didn't come to, they wrestle so-and-so, this team that we have here wrestled the fabulous Kangaroos in Madison Square Garden, because they kind of became the Kleenex, the brand name of tag teams in the late 50s, early 60s, because they traveled everywhere and they were specialists, as the Costello and Heffernan group. But they were better workers than the Von Brauners, but they probably weren't as easy to draw money with in hot situations as the Von Brauners, grudge matches, because the Von Brauners had the Nazi thing going for them. And they lasted 15 years together in every territory. But then, think of how many great tag teams that they had in the ratings in the Apter magazines in the 70s and 80s. So there were so many that, look, even by 86, the Crockett Cup, just the ones that Crockett was able to lay his hands on, there was 18 named teams out of that 24-team field. And that didn't count all the territories and anybody from New York.
How high do you rank Steamboat and Youngblood?
Well, they were fucking tremendous at their time, but they only teamed together for 2 years. So can you say that, they were as good as anybody else in the ring, but not for as long, and they weren't as good at the box office because they didn't stay together as long as, other great tag teams that main evented.
Okay, let's go on 2 years, though. Who do you think had a better 2 years, Steamboat and Youngblood or Tully and Arn?
Oh, boy. Well, Tully and Arn as heels and Steamboat and Youngblood as babyfaces. Tully and Arn were iconic, and I think as good as Steamboat and Youngblood were.
Wow.
But also Tully and Arn were more well-rounded because they had the promos also. But then think about how long were Slater and Orton together?
But they got together, 76 in Georgia? Around?
But they didn't work as solidly as a team exclusively for the next 7 years. They worked as a team sometimes when they were in the same territory together, and then they were fucking awesome. But they didn't travel as a team.
You put them together for the Night of Legends, or you brought them back to Knoxville. And by the way, there's a good example of Southeastern and All-Star coming together in that match.
Yes, yeah, there you go.
Did you intentionally, was that one of your goals? I want to get Slater and Orton in here?
Was Dick Slater and Bob Orton Jr. against Ronnie Garvin and the Mongolian Stomper? How much more Knoxville legendary could you be? And yes, and there's the team of Slater and Orton.
Did you think about doing any more with them in Smoky Mountain? Because the match was great. I was there live. That was a fantastic match.
Well,
live.
yeah, and Mac McMurray saw the last blind tag and killed the fucking hot tagger. It would have been a 5-star classic. But it was incredible. Probably until the referee botched the fucking seeing the wrong tag, it was probably work-wise all the way through psychologically the best match of the night. Because they all knew what the fuck they were doing. But no, because, I wasn't going to bring them back to make them a regular team, nor were they clamoring for me to do so. Both guys were retired at that point. They were making some shots. It was a special occasion. I wasn't going to, didn't have the money to invest and wasn't going to take the time to put them together, fly them in every week, do TV with them, put them on all the big shows.
Even solo. I'm not even necessarily saying as a tag team, but just the idea of bringing Dick Slater, in as a regular to a Knoxville territory. No thought of that at all?
Not with Slater, because he's kind of crazy, as you'll recall. With Orton, I would have, except I wanted to concentrate on the younger guys, and he wasn't really looking for another run. He was just having some fun.
Do you put the Assassins on your all-time tag team list? And the Andersons, I guess.
Well, I was about to, and there's the Andersons. I never got to see. Jody was so large, let's put it that way, at the end of his run when everybody got to see him. He was never a svelte person, but he could really move in those days. And I only got to see Tom Renesto really when he was booking for Nick Goulas in the late 70s. And then it came and had a run in Tennessee real briefly in 85. So, but I've heard that they were fucking masterful, and especially at getting heat. There's some 8mm footage from City Auditorium in Atlanta that I've got DVD clips of where you see they were taking big bumps, but I've heard that they were fantastic. But being able to really see Ole and Gene were much more my cup of tea than the Assassins.
And you never got to see the Flying Redheads, right?
No, I saw Red Bastien a bit. Once again, toward the end of, I say the end of his career, but right before he retired, and everybody said he was probably one of the best working baby faces and certainly one of the best high flyers anywhere. And, and you could tell that even when he was older, but there's not a lot of footage of them either that at least that I've been able to come across.
Well, with that, the Drive Thru episode 100, the spectacular that it has been, has closed.
Dueling sound effects.
I didn't even hear yours because mine was so sonic.
I gave us a round of applause for doing this 100 times. That sounds like you took a microphone and shoved it up Abdullah the Butcher's colon.
Well, my microphone now has Hep C, everyone.
And we'll talk about that on Thursday also, folks, on The Experience.
We'll be talking plenty about Hep C, HIV, and all of your other favorite communicable diseases this week on The Experience, which debuts on Thursday, available at any time, along with the drive-thru, of course, wherever you find your favorite podcast, or on YouTube, our official YouTube page, tinyurl.com/official corny YouTube, or just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette, and it comes right up.
Does our audio programming qualify as airborne pathogens?
Oh, well, it is airborne. I don't know. We are on the airwaves of some sort.
There you go.
Yeah, well, that stopped me dead in my tracks. But listen to the show wherever you can find it. And, of course, go to YouTube. And thank you to all the new subscribers on YouTube. And I guess thank you to all the new listeners of this show as well as The Experience. This is the record month for the drive-thru. So thank you to everyone who has checked out the show. Of course, you can follow Jim on Twitter at @Jim_Cornette. You can follow me on Twitter at @GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com and available wherever you find your favorite podcast for classic wrestling talk and wrestling humor. The 605 Superpodcast. We want to remind you to visit Cornette's Collectibles, where you can get t-shirts, DVDs, not action figures. I was going there. Burger towels, restraining orders.
We're still waiting.
And all sorts of other Jim Cornette collectible items, paraphernalia, ephemera, whatever you want to call it, curios, whatever it may be. Get it at jimcornette.com and from Cornette's Collectibles. And a quick reminder, you may have heard it this past week on The Experience, but go to rhino.com and enter the promo code JCE. You can save 10% on all purchases. That's pretty cool if you're into really great music.
And by the way, folks, for you younger fans, that's not the website of the wrestler Rhino, the fine young man from Michigan. That's Rhino Records, and you can get anything: DVDs, books, CDs, box sets, whatever they got, everything except the big Woodstock box set. 10% off. JCE, the promo code at rhino, RHINO.com.
That's right, and you'll hear more about that in the future. But until Thursday on The Experience, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!